Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 217 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I am a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book came out in November. It's called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick that up on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, I met our next guest, James, at the SGLA conference in Atlanta last week, and we started talking about Title IX, sexual assault prevention, and our ideology and the methods in which we communicate sexual assault prevention. I'm talking about consent. I'm talking about bystander intervention. It was all perfectly aligned, and I said, James, I got to get you onto the podcast. Let's talk. So I'm so glad he's here with us today. Let me tell you about James. James Wilkerson is a native of New Albany, Indiana. He holds a master's degree from Bellarmine University. He holds a bachelor's in English and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Louisville. While in law school, Wilkerson founded Greek Law as a student government project that developed sexual assault education directed specifically for fraternity and sorority members. So now James combines his personal experience as a fraternity man with elements of the law to deliver lectures that were not only educational, but also captivating, entertaining, and practical. James currently serves as Indiana University Southeast Director of Staff, Equity and Diversity, as well as their Deputy Title IX Officer. He is a member of Tau Kappa Epsilon Board of Advisors for the Omicron Sigma chapter in New Albany. And James was also named on Louisville Business First 20 People You Should Know in Law in 2020. Welcome to the show, James Wilkerson.
Hello. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Hey, this is my pleasure. This is going to be a lot of fun. I am so honored that you're with us today. And I wanted to make sure that our listeners get a little bit of background on where you came from. I know that you decided on the University of Louisville. So I'm wondering, why was Louisville the right choice for you?
Well, let me tell you, first off, and I hope I don't make anyone on the board of advisors for U of L upset with this, but Indiana University in Bloomington was actually my first pick. I'm from New Albany. That's where I wanted to go. That's where everyone else was going after high school. But my mom, mothers have a way of being smarter than us. She knew that IU at that time was the #1 party school in the nation. So she knew that if I went up there, there might be a good chance that I would come back without a degree. So she broke it down to me. She said, Joey, and everyone calls me Joey, so you can call me James or Joey either way. But she said, now, Joey, listen, you're not going up to Bloomington to act a fool for 4 years. If I'm paying for your college, you're either going to go to the University of Louisville or you can go to Indiana University Southeast in New Albany. Those are your options. So with those limited options, I decided, you know what? U of L has dorms. IUS at the time did not. I thought that I would be able to get a better campus feel living on campus at U of L. So U of L would offer me, being able to wake up and fend for myself in the dorms a little bit. I could join a larger fraternity at U of L. I could, go to sporting events, football games, things of that nature. So I chose U of L really for the atmosphere and the full college experience.
Well, it certainly worked out for you. So I think your mom must have known something. It was that motherly intuition that said, Joey, you're going to be right here.
Now, I will never tell her that because she will be like, I told you so. She is definitely I told you so type of mom. But
just let her be right for once. What is it? It's the end of the world. If she's right, let her be right. Let her have her glory for a moment.
Mothers know. Listen to your mom.
She knows her son. Believe me, she knows her son really well. So I think she was right on target. Now, we did mention that you joined TEAC at U of L. So what was special about the men at Tau Kappa Epsilon that made you want to join them?
So I really loved how authentic TEAC was whenever I was going through Rush. First night of Rush, and I'm sure it's like this for other campuses as well, first night, they take you to every single group. So we had 11 fraternities at the time. We saw 11 different fraternities in the span of 3 hours. And what it became was a lot of people saying the same thing. You would walk into a group, and there would be maybe 10 guys all wearing their navy blazer, and they got their khakis and they got the little rep tie on, and they're talking about how we're number one in intramurals and we're number one in grades. And after you hear that for about 6 or 7 times, you're like, no, wait a minute. Can't all y'all be number one? Someone's not telling it right. But we went to Teak last, and Teak was it was different. It was guys that were more laid back. Everyone was just kind of wearing the Rush t-shirt at the time, and it was just a more laid back atmosphere. And they were really honest. It was a situation of, hey, look, we may not always be at the top of intramurals. We might fall kind of in the middle of the pack sometime when it comes to grades, but you're going to have a good time with us. We have fun. It's a fun, laid back atmosphere. Going to meet a lot of really great guys, and it's laid back. So that's really what kind of got to me, was just how they stood out just by kind of being more their authentic selves.
I love it. Authenticity. I've heard a lot of that recently, especially within sorority recruitment as well, that people are just kind of pushing back on having to be dressed to the nines all the time, when that's not what we normally would wear around the house, right?
Right.
So it's like, can we just be authentic? Can we just be real with each other for a minute? Because I think when you are wearing just the Rush t-shirt and you can just really be yourself. You're not trying to put on a show. It's not a facade. This is who we are. If this resonates with you, then we would love to have you, right? And that spoke to you clearly.
That went a long way. It went a long way, because I knew exactly what I was getting with that organization right from the start.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. People, especially now, Gen Z, they just want the truth. They want honesty. So if they feel like this isn't real, if they feel this is like some kind of facade, then they're like, nah, I'm going to go somewhere else. Something's not right about this. I don't, it doesn't feel like it's the truth to me. And I think there's something to be said for that comment. So I really like that you bring that up, James. I think it's great. And, let's talk about this, because while you're in law school, now you founded Greek Law as a student government project that develops sexual assault education directed specifically for fraternity and sorority members. So I'm just kind of curious, what made you get so involved with sexual assault education?
Well, I tell you, so the one question that every law student is probably sick of answering is, what type of law are you going to go into? That's like the number one thing that people ask you when you're in law school. So what type of law are you going to practice? Half the time, you don't even know what you're going to do whenever the question gets asked to you. But for me, it was process of elimination. I came in wanting to do corporate law, wanting to do business law. I did some internships there, and I'm like, this is cool, but it's not quite for me. I'd like to say that I kind of had an awakening my first year of law school to public service and to kind of giving back and kind of working for other people. I realized, hey, I can use all of this good stuff that I'm learning, and I can take this out to, your common man and bring this out to regular people. So that kind of pushed me in the direction of criminal law. During our criminal law course, you go through all of the different, units. There's a unit on, on murder. There's a unit on assault. But the unit that we landed on whenever it was about sex crimes, that was just for whatever reason, that clicked. That was the light bulb that went off. Now, I do have a daughter. It's everyone that has a kid is automatically thinking about, like, okay, one day soon, my kid is going to be on a college campus. One day soon, 15 years, goes by quick. My daughter is going to be walking on the University of Louisville or IU's campus as a sorority woman, and she's going to have to deal with some of this, these things that are going on. So, I think that may have been what kind of drew me a little bit to the sex crimes. How can I turn around and make college campuses better in the 15 years that I have until my daughter winds up there? So I think that's kind of one thing that led me to there. But then I'll tell you, Michael, my love of Greek life really kind of drew me in that direction as well. When I look back on my time as an undergrad, some of the best times that I had was because I was in a fraternity. And I've never really left the life. I graduated and then I went on to become an advisor. And I've kind of jumped around. I've advised for my home chapter in U of L. I've advised over at IUS. I kind of go back and forth. Now, as we speak, I am the closest thing to an overall Greek advisor that our university has at IUS. So with that big of a love for fraternity life, my mind automatically goes to, hey, what can I do to make Greek life better? Because Greek life gave me so much. So what can I do to give back to Greek life? And it's like, well, if sexual misconduct is a problem that we're having in Greek life, maybe that's a place where I can help out at.
I love it. You and I are alike in so many ways. I mean, my master's degree is Master's of Public Service Management. So public service has always spoken to me. And then same thing. I mean, I got a 17-year-old son that's looking to figure out which college he's going to go to school at. I got a 15-year-old daughter who's 1 year academically behind my son. So she's going to be at college right after him. And so I'm thinking the same way as a parent. I'm like, how do I protect my kids so they come home in one piece? Because I am painfully aware of all the risk management issues that happen on a college campus. I talk about it every day with college students. And you know what? I've been bringing my kids to conventions since they were babies. So I know they're going to be fraternity president. I know they're going to be sorority president. Like that's already like a given, right?
Right.
So how do I make sure they come home in one piece? So I listen, everything about your answer. I mean, you can just put carbon copy Mike Eilon. I mean, it's exactly the same reason. So I totally get it. And also in 2020, you began writing this online legal journal, I Taught the Law. And your column, the Title IX Guy, breaks down legal issues in the realm of sexual assault in what we would call layperson terms. So what are some of the things that you write about in your column for the layperson?
So that's one of the things that my mock trial coach, when I was in law school, said about me. He's like, Wilkerson, you had just a way about you to take these complex legal theories and break it down to where the common person can just get it without having to go to any law school at all. And part of that is like, okay, sometimes, some of these things, maybe I don't even understand. So I'm going to break it down for myself, and I'll break it down for you too. But some of the topics that, we talk about in the I Taught the Law legal journal and my column specifically, I'm given a lot of freedom there to address a lot of different things. So I've talked about, obviously Title IX issues before. We've talked about sexual assault through hazing that happens. I've discussed relevant topics that are going on right now. So for instance, my very next article, which I just submitted last night, is a breakdown of domestic violence and the characteristics of a domestic abuser. But I'm using the situation that's going on with Kanye West and his very public divorce from Kim Kardashian as a lens to kind of show like, hey, here are some of the red flags that we are seeing in real time that Kanye is exhibiting through his behavior. And here's how it ties back to the characteristics of a domestic abuser. So like maybe I can use a little bit of pop culture to kind of teach you how, these are characteristics that typical abusers have. So yeah, working for that blog has just been great because I've been given the green light to be creative with it. The blog is ran by just a bunch of the professors that I had in our law school. So they're like, Wilkerson, come on, you're writing for us, write about whatever you want to write about. And they let me have a lot of free reign at it.
You have a great talent right there. I mean, that's the hallmark of a good teacher, is somebody who can break it down for the common person who maybe doesn't have a law degree, and just make sure that they understand it. I mean, I was seeing stuff like that when I was going through statistics in my master's degree program. I remember our professor, he basically came from NASA, okay? So when he was explaining things, you could see that students were like, I have no idea what this guy is talking about. And I remember after class, my car was parked outside of the classroom, and a bunch of students approached me after class and were like, Mike, I don't understand a single thing this guy was talking about. Can you explain it to me? So I took out my notes and I put it on the hood of my car. And they're all spread on the hood. And I'm like, I'm pointing, I'm teaching the lesson in a way that somebody who is not a business major, somebody who's not a math major could figure it out. And so, you know, I think I've got that ability too, but I haven't started a column on statistics. So just to be clear.
One of the things, one of the things about us in academia is that we have a habit of really wanting to make things a lot more complex than what they really are, because, you know, we are these academics and we're super duper smart and we want the whole world to know that we're super duper smart. But what I ask is, well, what's the purpose here? Is the purpose to show how smart you are, or is the purpose to change the culture? Because if the purpose is to change the culture, then we need to speak in the language of the people that we are working for. So that ties into it, and that's why I can really try to break it down for my audience.
I love it. And you've got the pop culture, you got Kanye. I mean, it's perfect. It's just absolutely perfect. So let's talk a little bit about college sexual assaults. You know, I think I started with alcohol and drug abuse prevention because I understood the relationship between alcohol and drugs and college sexual assault. But talk to our audience about that. How does drugs and alcohol factor into college sexual assaults?
One thing that I like to kind of lay out anytime I'm doing my consent lecture is that when it comes to Greek life, regardless of what we tell our new members, regardless of what we tell our parents on parent weekend, Greek life is always going to have 1 foot in drinking culture, 1 foot in hookup culture. Now, both of those cultures in moderation might be all right, but when the cultures intersect, that's when you start to see some of those issues. You know, whenever it comes to alcohol, as a Title IX coordinator and as someone who has sat on numerous hearing panels in student conduct at a variety of universities, a lot of the sexual misconduct cases that I deal with always has some type of alcohol element to it. Perhaps it was something that happened during a party or after a party where one or both of the parties had, you know, been intoxicated. You know, and it ranges from everything from, you know, the complainant being completely, you know, inebriated and out of it, all the way to, you know, both sides being kind of tipsy. But, you know, that tipsiness kind of has led to an issue. So, you know, I've seen alcohol, you know, spread all throughout these cases before. One common misconception that I think people have whenever it comes to sexual misconduct is that, you know, we get really into the Hollywood version of sexual misconduct, right? The guy hiding in the shadows and in the alley with the trench coat on, you know, just kind of, you know, beckoning you down the dark alleyway. But when you really look at it, that's not what we see on college campuses. Normally, the two parties know each other. Mm-hmm. You know, usually it's people that interact. You know, maybe they interact because they have classes together. Sometimes they might be interacting because they're dating. But when that alcohol kind of gets in there, then, you know, that kind of skews some judgment issues sometimes. And then, you know, we have those cases that come to my office. So it's difficult though, because, you know, the easy answer, Mike, would be for us to just say, hey, don't drink, right? I mean, don't drink. But, you know, you and I both know that that's not a practical answer. That's not a practical answer for a 19 or a 20 or a 21-year-old that is being planted in this place where alcohol is extra easy to grab. So, you know, I think we have to have different conversations of, look, we understand that we are in these two cultures. Let us help you navigate your way through. So yeah. I think that's kind of the conversations we need to be having with organizations.
Somehow we have to separate those two cultures, right? The alcohol and the hookup culture. Somehow we have to separate the two, If you're sober and you're going out for brunch the next day and you decide that this is somebody you want to be in a relationship with, then so be it. But do it sober. I think that is the key for both people. I think is the best way. So, but yeah, you're right. I think on a college campus, I think it would be naive of us to basically preach abstinence as it concerns alcohol, for example. Very difficult to do today. So
we have to get to a point where we can normalize not having to include alcohol in our courting plans. If your game plan is like, oh, let me buy this person, just enough drinks to kind of loosen things up. It's like, no, you are headed into a Title IX issue that you don't want to be in. And I don't know, Michael, maybe that means some of us old dogs coming out and having a class on like, here's how you flirt. Here's the proper way to spit your game, as we would say over here in Louisville. Maybe
and none of it includes alcohol. None of it.
Right.
None of it.
But we do need to normalize that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Absolutely true. I mean, right now it is unacceptable for a college student to get in their car and drive when they're under the influence of alcohol. I think we all agree that that's not something we do today. We have Uber, we have Lyft, you can call and get a ride, but we're not going to drive while under the influence of alcohol. I think we need to do the same thing for when people say that I need to get this person drunk so that way I can have sex with them. I mean, if we hear that in our chapters, immediately that's got to be, no, that's not what we do. And we have to shut that down immediately, just as we would shut down somebody grabbing their car keys and driving somewhere when they're under the influence of alcohol. So we have to get to that place. It took a while to get to that place for alcohol. I mean, as you know, maybe 30 years ago, maybe that was a little bit more commonplace. And people, maybe judges would kind of let them go. Well, they had alcohol, so we can't blame them for hitting a telephone pole. But now you're going to get the book thrown at you if you do that, right? I mean, let's just be honest, right? So things are shifting, and I'm hoping that we can shift as it relates to sexual assault prevention as well. But I mean, you started hinting at it in terms of, how we flirt with somebody, right? You kind of breaking it down for today's college students. Walk us through the mechanics of getting consent on a college campus. What does that look like?
So the misconception all the time is, well, if I ask for consent, that's going to ruin the mood. Isn't it going to ruin the mood if I ask? And my answer to that is, in all of my years of being sexually active, it hasn't ruined the mood yet. It has not ruined the mood yet. And it really is an exercise in really teaching how to ask for consent. Well, Joey, are you saying that I should just go up and just ask in a situation? Yeah.
Yes.
Why not? Now, there's a way that you can ask for consent without being weird about it. If you go up to someone and you say, well, hi, my name is Michael. I'm a member of XXX fraternity, and I was wondering if we could have sexual intercourse with each other. Michael, I don't know if that one's going to work out for you. I might be a little bit too rigid, but my go-to has always been to say, is this okay?
Yeah.
Is this cool? Something simple and to the point, and the answer is either yes, and that's the green light, or the answer is no, and if the answer is no, then move on. Keep it moving. Right. And it's really just teaching our guys that, hey, asking for consent doesn't have to be this big, drawn out, awkward process. It's something it can be something as simple as raising your hand, asking if you can go to the restroom during class. We ask people for consent all the time for other things, like, can I use the restroom, or can I do this at work? Boss, can I have Friday off? So we know how to ask for consent. It's just, okay, let's take that and put it over here and ask for consent for this. So I think I've had a lot of success teaching that to fraternity men and really just breaking it down to show how easy it is.
I love that. And thank you for doing what you do and for saying it as a man. I think it's important for us to talk about this and normalize that. And also understand that you got to pay attention to your partner so it can change over time. So if I give you consent to kissing today, does not necessarily mean that I'm giving you consent to sex today. And because I gave consent for sex this weekend, does not mean I'm giving you consent for sex next weekend either. It's a continuous process and things can change. So you got to be checking in with your partner. And I think James put it out there perfectly. Is this okay? I mean, just, asking that question. And guess what? To all the men that are listening right now, good communication skills, that's hot. That is hot. Okay. I understand you're on Tinder, you're swiping right, you're swiping left on your phone. Very little opportunity for communication skills in that scenario. But I'm telling you, good communication skills is hot. So just keep that in mind, right?
Another area of consent is, consent doesn't cover everything. This is a generation, and I feel like I can speak on this because I'm at the very beginning of the generation, but I'm part of a generation that learned a lot about sex from pornography. And very rarely in pornography is consent part of the storyline. So regardless of what you may have seen on Pornhub, you still have to ask permission for everything that you want to do here. Just because you have consent, it's not a blanket term. So you still have to ask consent if you want to do something else. You can't just do whatever you saw, whenever you were on page 13 of your search there. So that's another part of it. It's just breaking it down, and it's something that can be broken down in about an hour and 15 minutes. But it's that's part of it.
It's good work, and I'm happy that you're out there doing it. What are some methods that fraternity and sorority members can use if they want to intervene? Let's say they see a wasted couple heading up to the second floor bedrooms of the fraternity house during a party, and they know the bedrooms are up there, but maybe they don't know how to intervene. So what should they do in that scenario?
So every person, when it comes to bystander intervention, is going to be different. We're all different because we have different personalities. Me, I'm a very loud, outgoing person. So there's not many incidents or areas where I'm going to feel nervous in. But if you're an introverted person, conflict is probably going to be the last thing that you want to do. But there are different ways for different people to go about it. So first is the direct, is to just be direct, the direct way. That direct way might be you walking up those stairs and saying, we're not doing this. You go that way, you come with me, I'm gonna get you back to your people. This is not going down. If that's your friend, maybe that direct way is to say, hey, Michael, dude, come on, man, you're not supposed to be doing stuff like that. Let's think about this. It might just be you being the voice of reason. If being direct isn't the way that you want to go about it, though, maybe it's delegating it to someone else. Who's throwing the party? This is Michael's house. Hey, Michael, there's a situation going on upstairs from the second floor. It's your house. You're the host of the party. You go handle that. So maybe it's sending you up there or sending someone else with a little bit more authority up. Maybe it's just a distraction altogether. Maybe that's what you do. So once again, Michael, if you're at a party and you're kind of you're continuously hitting on someone who clearly doesn't want to be hit on, maybe it's me running a distraction. Hey, Michael, dude, you gotta check out what's going on over here. It's going down out in the backyard. So now I've distracted you. I've brought you out of that backyard, and now I've put that distance between you and whoever that person in that bedroom is going to be. And that distance might be just what that person needs to get back to their friends or get back to whatever safety might look at. So there's a ton of different ways that you can go about it. One of the best things and the best quotes about bystander intervention I've ever heard has actually come from a freshman in high school. I was there doing a workshop with a local high school, and at the end, they had to type out what they learned from my presentation. And one student wrote, I learned that it's never okay to not do anything.
Mm.
And I'm like,
There you go.
100%, you got it. So if a high school freshman can get that, I know our college freshmen who are super smart, they can get that too.
Amen. Amen. That sounds wonderful. You know, a healthy masculinity is something that we haven't talked enough about. I think, you know, in past decades, it's now starting to be a topic that people are starting to approach. How can we achieve healthy masculinity in our college student organizations?
The first thing we have to do is we have to define what we mean when we say a healthy masculinity. Toxic masculinity has become a phrase that has been so politicized that when people hear toxic masculinity, they automatically go on defensive mode. Toxic masculinity, how dare you say men are bad? I'm like, no, that's not what we're saying. What we are saying is there's some behavior that we participate in that's toxic, but there's also behavior that we participate in that's healthy. And here's the thing, as men, we are human beings. We are capable of being toxic and healthy all in the same day. I like to think that I exhibit healthy masculinity most of the time. But if you get me on the highway and I'm late going somewhere and I get a slow driver in front of me, that toxic masculinity gonna rise to the top every single time. But step number one is defining what we mean by healthy masculinity and toxic. If you want an easy way to do it, one thing I tell people is like, look, you got two people in the world. There are gentlemen and then there's assholes. So if you are so hung up on toxic versus healthy masculinity, break it down like that. Gentlemen, assholes. And we can be both, can't we? So that's step one. Step two is being able to identify the behavior that is going on in our organization. What is the toxic masculinity in our organization manifesting itself as? So you know, we've talked about this a little bit earlier on, you know, about giving praise to toxic behavior. Like, hey man, like, dude, I saw you with that girl at that drunk party at that party last night. She was drunk. Like, you know, did you hook up with that? It's like, okay, so why is that our culture for? If we are rewarding people for behavior like that, then that means we have an issue with our culture. So being able to kind of pick out those issues. And then once those issues are picked out, it's working together to solve them. It's working together to, I like to call it the toxic masculinity tree, cutting down those toxic masculinity trees when we see them. And sometimes that might mean that you might have a culture war in your fraternity. There might be some seniors that are like, well, this is the way we've done it forever. You may have a group of freshmen and sophomores that say, well, guess what? We're the future and we're going to change it. And those battles, they can be a little bit difficult, but you can't be afraid of them. You can't be, you know, scared of them. And you have to come together to make that actual change and be intentional about it.
Yeah, I think step number one is noticing that you've got a problem in terms of toxic behavior, right? So if we're giving out an award to the brother who is hooking up the most, you know, this week, then that's, you know, all right. So we notice, hey, there's something in our culture here that's rewarding that behavior. How can we instead give an award for somebody that matches the values of the fraternity, which is something that we should be keeping in the forefront of our members on a weekly basis? You know, how did James most exemplify scholarship this week? And let's talk about that as opposed to who's hooking up with who and rewarding that. But you got to notice you got a problem first, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you go back, I still have my pledge book handy in my home office. And if you go back into that book, and we used to have this this arbitrary point system. And now this was back in the early 2000s. Can't do stuff like this now because it's definitely hazing. It's probably hazing back then too. But we had this arbitrary point system where we would designate points to our brothers. And, you know, the point system, when it was born, it was supposed to give points for good things. So if you got an A on your test, hey, 5 points for you, sir. If you know, helped a brother out by, you know, maybe giving him a ride somewhere, hey, 10 points for you. But then you start to kind of look at what some of the other points are being given for. Hey, 5 points for hooking up with that cute girl. 10 points for for, drinking, a full 6-pack of beer without getting sick. And it's just like, red flags popping up. You are rewarding this behavior. So you might have a cultural problem there.
There you go. That's a good way to look at it. You're the Director of Staff Equity and the Diversity Deputy Title IX Coordinator at IU Southeast. Talk to our audience a little bit more about the types of things that you do in that role as a Title IX coordinator.
As a Title IX coordinator, all issues and complaints of sexual misconduct that happen on our campus ultimately comes back to me. So sexual assault, sexual harassment, discrimination, stalking, that's been a big thing since we've come back from the pandemic. It has been stalking. All of these issues come back to me. Then it's on me to kind of handle it. And when I say handle it, sometimes that means launching into a full investigation. Sometimes that means maybe just providing resources for a complainant. Sometimes that might mean me sitting down and just kind of having, some hard conversations with a respondent. A lot of times when it comes to these stalking cases specifically, I'll have someone come in my office and say, well, I don't want to, launch into a full investigation on this, but I would like for you to talk to that person and to let them know that, hey, leave me alone, I'm not interested. So then I got to bring that person in and say, look, man, here's the thing. Here's why what you are doing is considered stalking. And a lot of the times, it'll be a person that doesn't quite understand what they're doing is stalking. I deal with a lot of socially awkward people that come to my office and they don't understand that, like, hey, you can't follow someone around, all day long because that might make them uncomfortable. So I try to use that as learning experiences whenever I can to try to make people into the best versions of themselves that I can be. Now, sometimes I gotta switch over into lawyer mode and I gotta do that full investigation. And we do have to launch into a more formal hearing process, but it's that and all points in between.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I was looking at your resume and I saw the Louisville Business First 2021 40 under 40. You were the recipient of this award. I mean, what does it feel like to be recognized in such a great award?
Well, one of the mottos that we have in TEAC is not for wealth, rank, or honor. So, you go and you do good things, not to one day get a reward from it, but you do it just because it's the right thing. And that's what builds good personal character. Now, that said, I'll be honest with you, it feels great when people recognize you for the things that you've done. And when it comes to 40 under 40, here's what you don't see on Facebook. What you don't see on Facebook is the fact that I've actually been nominated for that 3 times. And, I missed out on it, the first 2 times. But it really had me sit down and kind of look at myself and try to think like, okay, how can I better myself? How can I, what are some things that I can do to better myself to maybe where I will be on that 40 under 40 level? So whenever I bring it home in 2021, it feels great because I'm able to look back at where I was in 2019. I can see how I've grown as a person, how I've grown as a professional. And so when I look at that trophy represents growth to me. So
yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
It feels good. It feels real good.
That's a beautiful thing. Congratulations. That's amazing. Now, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. So I'm wondering, what's your favorite restaurant in the Louisville area?
So in Louisville, I tell you, we've lost a few really good restaurants since the pandemic. Some things just weren't able to stay open. And R.I.P. Martin's Barbecue. That place was fantastic. But my favorite restaurant in Louisville is a place called Cunningham's. It's right on the river. Some of the best fish that you are going to get in the city. It is definitely, it's open all year long, but it's definitely a summer restaurant. It's definitely a summertime restaurant. You'll have people pulling up on their boats, stocking their boats, hopping out, and walking right up the stairs and grabbing a table. It's great to sit on the deck and just kind of watch boats go by. But yeah, some of the best fish. Nice little family place too. I can bring my daughter there, grab a little a lake iced tea, or iced tea as they call it, which is really just an LIT. But get some good catfish going. So Cunningham's is where it's at. If you're ever in Louisville, come to Cunningham's. They're not paying me to say that either. That's coming from the heart or from the stomach, one of the two.
All right, Cunningham it is, and I will certainly check that out in Louisville. And if you want to go to Martin's Barbecue, we'll find you that spot in Nashville downtown, and we'll make it happen. I promise you. We'll get to dinner at Martin's.
It was so good. I'm going to shed a tear.
It is good. All right, so if our listeners, if they want to bring you to their campus to come and speak about sexual assault prevention, some of the great stuff that you're involved with, where's the best place for students to go and to connect with you?
Best place to connect with me is through Instagram. If you go on Instagram, I am listed as the Title IX guy. 9 is in the Roman numeral form. Follow that. Following me on Instagram, there's several benefits of that. Number one, I got one of those cool little link trees now. So I link out to everything that I do. So different articles for the newspaper, different articles for the I Taught the Law blog, my TED Talks. You can find everything about me through that link tree. But you also have a direct message link to me as well. Holler at me there. We can set some time up to do a Zoom. And I really like to try to figure out what the specific needs of your organization is. So maybe you need new member education. Maybe you need someone to come talk to your whole chapter. I am flexible when it comes to that as well. So the Title IX guy on Instagram, and you can also find the Title IX guy. I love some shameless self-promotion. You can always find the Title IX guy on Amazon as well. So if you are someone who likes to read about this stuff, I got my first book out there right now. So look that up on Amazon too.
I love it. The Title IX guy on Amazon, on Instagram. James Wilkerson, I so appreciate the work that you do. It's so important that we keep this effort up, that we're talking about sexual assault prevention, especially important that men get involved in this conversation. So I really appreciate you. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you too, Michael. It's been a pleasure being on with you today.
Absolutely. The honor is mine. And to all of our listeners, we hope that you enjoyed it. Please give a like, give a thumbs up for James Wilkerson on this episode here on social media. Make sure that you share it with other fraternity and sorority leaders on campus. And we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.